Hi everyone, and welcome to English Digest. I'm Pat.
And I'm Erin.
So today we're going to be talking about something that's, I guess it's kind of a Singaporean culture thing, but as we'll find out, it does exist in other cultures as well. Have you ever been to Singapore?
I have. Just once for a couple of days, and then I guess I spent a few hours in the airport there, sort of wandering around. But
I have not. How did you find it?
It was a few years ago, so I can't really give a good answer. I think I was only there for a couple of days. I went for a concert. I did a bit of shopping, and that's about it. So I was, I guess, in and off the train every once in a while, but I don't remember anything particular about it. So,
yeah.
No.
I mean, all I kind of know about it is it's obviously hot, it's humid, it's a mix of cultures.
Right.
And it's supposed to be like really clean and...
That I do remember. Trees everywhere.
Great.
Very clean.
Okay. And
Yes.
I've heard the people from Singapore are generally sort of really polite and...
I don't remember.
Not so much.
No.
But this kind of reputation that I seem to have picked up from somewhere, whether it's true or not, may be contrasted by what we're about to read. Because some of the stuff we're going to find out about here doesn't sound polite at all. So let's read through the article and find out, are you kiasu?
Ooh.
The MRT train arrives at your destination and you can't wait to get off. However, as soon as the doors open, you're elbowed left and right by boarding passengers eager to get on. It's common courtesy to let passengers off a train before you board, but this is not always observed. This need to be the first is typical of kiasu behavior. Coined in Singapore, kiasu, translated from the Hokkien Chinese dialect, refers to the fear of losing out. This term gained international recognition when it was added into the Oxford English Dictionary in 2007. The kiasu trait is present in other cultures, however, it's especially prevalent in Singapore. The inherent fear of losing is actually a survival instinct, according to Dr. Leong Chan Hung, a researcher at the National University of Singapore. In his view, a country this small with few natural resources has no choice but to get ahead. In fact, this young nation's transformation from third world to first is likely linked to the kiasu mentality. Though many Singaporeans don't like to admit that they are kiasu, this attitude continues to influence their way of life. Some parents are so kiasu that they send their children for enrichment classes even before they've learned how to walk. There is also the national practice of choping, or securing seats at hawker centres and food courts with packets of tissues. This ensures that kiasu-driven customers have a place to sit when they return with their food. Take a look around you the next time you're out. You might be able to witness kiasu behavior or even find that you've fallen victim to kiasu culture yourself.
Okay, so an interesting way of looking at Singapore, I guess we've got here. So maybe on the outset they are friendly and they like keeping things clean and all those things, but you might see this behavior if you visit there. So let's talk about the title. It says, are you kiasu? And basically that's just a question to say, think about it yourself, basically.
Yeah.
So we're going to learn what kiasu is in the second paragraph, but it's basically an attitude that you have about being first.
Yeah, you can... There's different ways we use it in the article. We use kiasu behavior, culture, mentality, attitude. But I think in casual speech in Singapore, someone can just be kiasu. It kind of works as a noun and an adjective.
Right. Okay, so the first line of our article here is going to sort of explain a situation where you might witness this behavior. So it says the MRT train arrives at your destination and you can't wait to get off. Now, a destination, of course, is the place that you are going to. So if you're going on a trip to Hong Kong is your destination. If you're going to Taipei main station is your destination. But as soon as the doors open, you're elbowed left and right by boarding passengers eager to get on. So you're standing at the door, you're trying to get off the train, but you can't because everybody getting on is just so eager, so excited, so happy that they're about to do something that they try to get on before you can get off.
Yeah, now I will say this does happen, not all the time, this does happen here in Taiwan.
Yes.
Most stations, people are generally pretty polite. There's a few where I see this every time. Minchuan West Road and Zhongxiao Xinsheng, whenever people are getting onto the yellow line, this happens.
Right.
I don't know why. I'm not sure if I'm able to explain why those stations in particular and why that line in particular. But it does happen, and I have occasionally had to kind of push people out of the way or ask, like, what are you doing? Like, please allow me to leave, and then you can get on.
I find this happens to me a lot more in Taiwan when it comes to elevators.
Yeah.
There's a thing about always being the first in the elevator and not letting people off.
Yeah,
so.
Whether it's a fear that the elevator's going to kind of go without you or the doors will close and you'll be trapped. Maybe the same with the MRT. Maybe people who know they've got like a 12-station journey and they really want to get a seat. But this is, it's not particularly polite behavior.
Right.
But before we get on to what is and isn't polite, let's talk about the word eager. People are elbowing you because they're eager to get on. Actually, let's mention that elbow as a verb can basically mean to kind of hit or push someone with your elbow.
That's right.
And if you're elbowed left and right, that doesn't literally mean that there's one on the left and one on the right hitting you. It just kind of means that people are using their elbows all over the place.
Right, to push, basically.
Exactly, and you're taking a few in the ribs or in the arms. But the word eager, these passengers are eager to get on. If you're eager to do something, you really want that thing to happen. You want that thing to happen quickly. You've been looking forward to it, and now it's here, and you're like, yes, I've been waiting, and now it's my time.
Right. Okay, well, let's kind of learn more about the politeness of this. It says here, it's common courtesy to let passengers off a train before you board, but this is not always observed. Now, of course, courtesy as a noun is polite behavior and respect for other people. It's showing that you have respect for other people, so your behavior, you sort of use your behavior to show that. So instead of pushing people, you sort of wait for people to move aside. Now, we did say common courtesy here, and that's kind of the same thing, but common courtesy or common decency or even common politeness is a polite way of behaving that you expect from people. So it's sort of like this behavior is polite and it's typical for people to do because it's a custom in sort of that culture.
Like standing in line. It's common courtesy. If there's a line at a shop or a restaurant, you wait behind the last people.
Exactly.
You don't jump ahead in the queue. That would be extremely rude. So common courtesy is to line up properly. You don't, if there's people waiting in an ATM, you don't shove the people out the way so you can use it first.
Yes. Common courtesy says get in line.
Exactly. And everybody pretty much in the world expects other people to do that, and they do it themselves, and that's why it's common. It's just normal, polite behavior.
Exactly. But we did say that this common courtesy, this polite behavior, is not always observed. Now, in this definition of observe, you are kind of following a law or custom. You're obeying maybe not a rule, but like a typical behavior. So here we're saying that it's common behavior for you to get in line or to not push. When you were saying that it's not observed, we're saying that this you're not doing this behavior,
Yes,
basically.
exactly.
You're not following it.
Yeah, we could also talk about observing other MRT rules like no eating and drinking. You'd be observing classroom rules if you follow those rules.
Right.
A similar but slightly different meaning is observing cultural traditions, like, going to the temple on the first day of Chinese New Year.
Right.
That would be observing a cultural tradition. So, people don't always wait and let others get off the MRT before they go in. That's what we're saying here. And this need to be first is typical of kiasu behavior. If you have this attitude, that's what you would probably do. And you'd be like, okay, maybe it's impolite, but I need that seat.
Right. I've got to go all the way to Danshui. I need to get on.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, well, it's still not polite.
It isn't.
So
okay.
let's find out about where this word kind of comes from. Coined in Singapore, kiasu, translated from the Hokkien Chinese dialect, refers to the fear of losing out. If you coin a term or coin a word, you kind of basically invent that and start using it, and it enters popular use. So the word doesn't come from, as we see, it comes from this Hokkien Chinese dialect, but it didn't start in the area in China where that's from. It actually kind of became popular in Singapore. So we say that it was coined. Now, Hokkien Chinese, I believe, is kind of like a cousin to Taiwanese.
I'm not sure.
I think it is. I think it's just like it's like the mainland version of Chinese, I guess, going back to Fujian province a long time ago. So a lot of people, I think it's the main language of the Chinese community of Singapore, maybe. But it's a dialect, and a dialect is a particular form of a language peculiar to a specific region or social group. In the UK, I can very easily think about, okay, there's the different English dialects from the south, the north, up in Scotland, in Wales. Every different area seems to have its own, often quite different dialects.
Yeah, I mean, Canada has a little bit of that too. We have the Newfie dialect, which is
I've heard and not understood.
Almost impossible to understand if you're not from the area. And then there's sort of like, I guess, the Maritime dialect, which is sort of halfway in between Canadian and French and
that's
Newfie.
Kind of yours.
Yeah, that's
okay.
mine. And then obviously we have the French dialect, and everything basically west of Ontario is kind of the same. I mean, there are different words and stuff, but it's mostly the same.
Yeah, the same language, just with sometimes different words, different accents, different pronunciations, so that you go, okay, you can kind of identify them as being, okay, that person is Scottish, that person is from the west coast of Canada, or that person's from New York. In the same way, we'd have dialects here, like someone from the east coast of Taiwan, they're going to sound a bit different when they speak Chinese or even Taiwanese to somebody from Taipei.
Okay, so now we know what sort of kiasu means, and it says here it refers to the fear of losing out. I guess in modern terminology, we would call that FOMO, maybe?
FOMO, yeah, fear of missing out on something. That's often used like socially, like, oh, I'm not going to parties, I'm not doing this cool thing.
Yeah.
This is more like, oh, there was something and I didn't get it.
Right. I needed to win.
Yes.
All right. Well, here's where it kind of became more popular internationally. It said this term gained international recognition when it was added to the Oxford English Dictionary in 2007. Of course, the Oxford English Dictionary is one of the largest and oldest dictionaries in the world, and kind of the premier sort of teller of words, I guess you could say.
Usually if a word gets added into it, it's been researched. There've been a board. There's actually a group of people who meet and decide whether to add it in or not. It's not just like, hey, there's a new word, let's put it in. There has to be a board meeting of some kind. And they added this one, 11 years ago now. And so, yeah, it's kind of common use. We also see that the kiasu trait is present in other cultures. We've kind of mentioned that with Taiwan sometimes.
Right.
However, it's especially prevalent in Singapore. If something is prevalent, it's widespread in a particular area or at a particular time. It's something that's very commonly seen in that place or in that time.
That's right.
Yeah, it's just,
it's just very used a lot there.
Yeah, you can see plenty of examples. Now, we'll find out why Singapore in just a moment, but we're going to take a short break now, and we'll be back in a few.
right, welcome back. So what we're going to talk about now is kind of a little bit of scientific background. A researcher who sort of looked into this has some ideas about kiasu and kind of where it comes from. So it says here, the inherent fear of losing is actually a survival instinct, according to, I know I'm going to mess this up, Dr. Liang Changhung. Don't really know how to say that name, but that's who he is. So let's find out what he's saying here. It says, the inherent fear of losing is actually a survival instinct. Now, something that's inherent is a basic quality of something. It's something that's naturally found with something, and it sort of can't exist without that thing. So it can't be separated. So what we're saying is that fear is a natural part of survival, or this survival instinct we have. So an instinct is a tendency to behave in a particular way, not because you were taught to behave in that way, but because your body just sort of, or your body and your mind sort of naturally react that way. So you have a survival instinct. Your body, without you even thinking about it, will do what it has to survive. And that's your survival instinct. It's related to fight or flight. Do I run or do I fight? It's related to your heartbeat. Your heartbeat moves faster when you're nervous because you need more energy, more blood going through your body to keep you
oxygen.
Moving.
Yeah,
exactly.
So it helps you survive. So the fear of losing helps you survive. And the idea is, if people weren't afraid of losing, they probably would lose, and therefore they wouldn't survive. So this fear kind of drives them to do the things that are necessary. And this is according to this doctor, again, a name we'll kind of skip over. You can see how it's spelt. He is a researcher at the National University of Singapore. A researcher is someone whose job is academic. They will research things and publish their findings in various journals, in thesis papers, and so on, and often give talks about it. They will often teach as well at university, but their primary job is to find out more about their specialist subject.
Exactly.
A science researcher would research different sciences, usually something very specific. This guy seems more like a sort of a cultural researcher, learning
maybe like
about
an anthropologist.
Exactly. That's somebody who studies kind of human behavior over long periods of time and why we do what we do. So why? He says it's a survival instinct, and why is that important for Singapore?
Okay, well, it says in his view, so we're saying maybe this hasn't actually been published in a lot of articles, so it's still new research. They're still finding evidence for it. But in his view, a country this small, so we all know that Singapore is quite a small country, and it has few natural resources. It has no choice but to get ahead. So it doesn't have a lot of oil, a lot of lumber from trees, a lot of rock,
even land.
Yeah, things that they can sort of use for making money or exporting to other countries, to have other things imported, that sort of thing. So they don't have a lot of these resources to use to sort of make more money. And so they need to sort of use their humans to do that. And so there's sort of, the humans have developed this kiasu behavior in sort of, I guess, to replace what they don't have, and that's how they're going to get ahead or succeed.
By always winning, by always trying to be first. And further to this, this guy's opinion is, in fact, this young nation's transformation from third world to first is likely linked to the kiasu mentality. So Singapore as a country is around 50 or 60 years old, I think. Yep. And in that time, it's transformed from a kind of a very poor area at the south end of Malaysia that became independent, and it transformed from third world, which is, we use the third world to describe kind of poor countries with little...
Still developing.
Yeah, developing nations, not much infrastructure, not many cities, to first world, which is a well-developed country with all sorts of infrastructure, a democratic government and all the various other things.
Right.
And that's a transformation. A transformation is a change from one state into another state. And it's managed to do that possibly because of the kiasu mentality. A mentality is like an attitude. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of behaving. It's that sort of why you do what you do. It's what drives you to do the things you do.
Okay, so this isn't a very great thing we're describing here. It might be quite common, but a lot of people, they don't want to sort of be thought of that way. So
yeah, because it is associated with being kind of impolite and a bit
pushy.
rude. Yeah, you don't maybe think, okay, I'll do it, but I'd rather people didn't kind of talk about me like,
right.
That
like I'm a bad person.
That person's so impolite, they're always selfish and so on.
Right.
So you don't want to kind of admit to it.
Exactly.
Except maybe for fun.
Okay, well, it says here, though many Singaporeans don't like to admit that they are kiasu, this attitude continues to influence their way of life. Now, when you admit something, you're kind of agreeing to something that is true, but maybe, you know, it's not something good about you, or you've made a mistake and you're saying, oh, yes, I guess I was wrong. That's never a good feeling to have. So you're kind of agreeing to something unwillingly, but somebody else is right and you have to say, oh, yes, maybe I was wrong. That sort of thing
is true. And the thing they're admitting to is having this attitude, and this attitude, the kiasu attitude, is still important in their lives. An attitude, it's similar to the word we just looked at, mentality. It's the way you behave, particularly around other people. It's the way you think. It's just the kind of view you have towards the world and how that makes you react to the world.
That's right. Okay, so let's find out how kiasu some people are and sort of how it influences their life. So it says here some parents are so kiasu that they send their children for enrichment classes even before they've learned to walk. Now, enrichment as a noun is the act of improving the quality of something. So you're making something better. Now, I did look up enrichment classes specifically. Me too. And it's basically similar to Taiwan's bushibans or cram schools, but sort of like...
Some of them are academic, maybe, but...
Right, some of them are cultural. They're like teaching art and music and...
But there's even things like teaching them how to develop better sensory skills to improve sense of smell or sight, or how to hold chopsticks and how to make their own food for themselves.
Right.
Sort of make them into completely excellent functioning human beings.
Which is a great thing to do. But maybe that's a little early before they've even learned to walk.
I bet learning to walk is one of the enrichment classes.
It might
This is how you walk, kids.
Yeah.
Let's all walk together.
Okay.
So that's one example of kiasu. Here's another one. There is also the national practice of choping. So again, this word presumably comes from a dialect in maybe again Hokkien Chinese or one of the other languages spoken in Singapore. Choping, it is pronounced chope, C-H-O-P-E as a verb. Choping is the gerund form with the ing. And what it means is securing seats at hawker centres and food courts with packets of tissues. You get to the food court, you see a table, and you put just some tissues down there and say, that's mine now, that's my seat. Then you go off and get your food.
And then you go back and no one has moved your tissue.
No one has moved your tissues. That's your seat. So that's what we mean by securing seat. You're making sure that thing is secure. You're making sure that thing is yours. It's safe. Nobody else can have it. A hawker center, a hawker is a person who travels about selling things, usually yelling about what they have, like get my noodles, get my fruit, something like get my bags. I'm selling bags. And in Singapore, a lot of the people who maybe they're used to travel around the streets have kind of been asked to gather in these areas to do all their buying and selling, just to kind of make the streets kind of open and easier to control. So they've developed these huge places. They're kind of a bit like night markets, where people would go to eat or buy stuff and shop around.
Okay, and food courts obviously is almost exactly like the hawker center. It's just inside in air conditioner, probably in a mall or a department store. That's where you see them here. Okay, so you're securing your seat with a packet of tissue. A packet is just sort of like a small package or envelope that contains a set of similar things. So like a packet of tickets or a packet of tissue. It's all tissue. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Okay. And this behavior, this choping, ensures that kiasu-driven customers have a place to sit when they return with their food. Like we said, they get back, no one's moved the tissues, that's their seat. And everybody seems to kind of respect or
Maybe that's where the polite part comes in.
Yeah, because people are like, just tissues, I'm going to move these off. Or I'm
that's what I would do here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I guess in Singapore, it's become a thing that if someone does get it down, then all right, that's it. Maybe not everyone follows it, but everyone kind of goes for it, and that ensures or makes sure, which is what ensures means, that people get their seats. So there's an example. Time to kind of wrap this article up, and we say, take a look around you the next time you're out. Look at what people are doing. See how people are behaving.
Are they acting as a kiasu? With the kiasu behavior, it says you might be able to witness kiasu behavior. Witness means that you'll see something happen, or you're sort of experiencing something happening to you, or a change that's happening in front of you. Basically, it means that you're seeing something happen in front of you. So you might witness someone sort of doing this kiasu behavior. Maybe they're pushing their way to the front of a line, or they're sort of saving their seat when, they should be giving it to other people or that sort of thing.
Like one person in a coffee shop who's somehow occupying like
3 tables.
Yeah, because their friends are coming later and they want to make sure they get them.
Right. All right. Well, you might even find that you've fallen victim to kiasu culture yourself. So if you take a look around, what are you doing? Are you that person pushing onto the train so you can get the seat? Or maybe you've fallen victim to this behavior. That means that you're sort of been affected by this behavior. It's usually talked about in a negative way. So you've sort of been negatively affected by this behavior. You're a victim of this bad behavior.
Yeah, you could fall victim to crime. Someone could, if your purse is stolen, you've fallen victim to theft. If you're attacked, you've fallen victim to assault and so on. You just are the victim of something.
Right.
Now, before we wrap up, I did chat with somebody whose family is from Singapore, and she was saying that kiasu has its upsides.
Okay.
For example, kiasu behavior would be like getting buy one, get one free in places. People who are like really driven to get bargains, that is also kiasu behavior.
Okay.
And there's nothing really wrong with that.
It just depends how long you need to wait in line for a coffee.
Well, she gave me the example of something that happened in Taiwan a couple of months ago when there were the internet, like all you can use internet for $499.
Yes.
And a few of the phone companies did that. Lining up to get that is kiasu behavior. And there's nothing wrong with doing it.
No.
So it's just a way to get something that's kind of better.
Right. I'm just of the idea that I'm too lazy to wait in that line.
Yeah, and I don't use the internet that much on my phone to make it worth it.
I would rather just pay more.
Exactly, yeah. But some people will go, no, I'm lining up, I'm getting up early, I'm getting down to my local Taiwan Dagada, and I'm lining up, or my Chonghua. Those people are kiasu. And so there are upsides and downsides to the behavior.
Okay.
But that is all the time we have for today. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon for English Digest. I'm Pat.
And I'm Erin.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.